you, Gaherlock. The Minister next, please. Thank you, Gaherlock. Minister, again, we find ourselves discussing the issues of transport and Kildare transport in the Chamber. I'm beginning to feel a little bit like a broken record, but that is because the system indeed is still broken, and we're trying to fix it. And I'm asking for your assistance today, Minister, with that and with expediting some solutions, because I think we know quite well, it's been well documented, not least between our debates, what the problems are. Transport issues, as they have come in, the first debate I had in this chamber was with you, Minister Ross, on transport issues, but indeed they go along back before either of us were here. But they have worsened, and I suppose partly it is a problem of success because the service has improved. The service to Sallins, Hazelhatch, Newbridge line, Sallins and Hazelhatch stations are now in the leap zone, and of course we go to the Phoenix Park Tunnel, which is all very welcome. And indeed, I came in on that train this morning, and I'll be returning on it in about an hour's time tonight. The problem, however, is that the facilities and capacity has not kept pace. Naturally, increased demand has followed these improvements, and we welcome the growing economy and other reasons why people are back on the trains again. But we do have a chronic shortage of, in particular, car parking. The carriages are full as well. I got reports just before I took to my feet that the 5:30 leaving Houston or leaving town this evening is chronically congested again. That's the carriages. But actually, even getting a space in the morning to park your car so you can get on the train is becoming almost impossible. I would say in my own case, it's probably about a year since I've actually been able to get my car into the station in the mornings. And many people are finding the same difficulty. In actual fact, at the car park on Sallins and Naas train station, you need to be there now between 7 and 7:15 a.m. at the latest to have any hope of getting a space, to have any hope of being able to park your car and go and get on the train, which is a crying shame for many reasons. For the individuals involved, it's highly stressful, trying to juggle childcare, trying to juggle getting to work, trying to juggle commitments, and having to fight for a space that is almost impossible to get after such an early time is difficult enough. And of course, for society, the shame that people are actually being forced away from public transport, because we all support the goal of improved public transport, and public transport being the primary mechanism. I would love to see a situation where the car became the exception, maybe for a trip on a Sunday afternoon, and the norm was using a train or using a Lewis to get to work. But unless we can provide people with the facilities, with the space, with enough room on the train to stand or sit or manage to squeeze on, and critically to actually park the car in the first place, we're nowhere near getting there. This situation, I think, was entirely predictable. We only need to look at the house planning permissions being granted. The Naas, Sallins area and Clane area has grown and is growing with many developments. There's much to recommend the area, but it was entirely predictable that these kind of demands would be placed upon the train service, because the presence of the train station is at the hub of the community, and in terms of as a commuter hub, and all these plannings, etc., have been granted on the basis of public transport being available to the area. But essentially, it is no longer available, and we see people forced into their cars actually to drive basically into Dublin. People are trying to fight with each other in the mornings, trying to scrap over available spaces. People are being forced into local housing estates, clogging up the entire village, causing all kinds of acrimony. And in fact, in recent weeks, Irish Rail have had to appoint a staff member to literally police the car park and walk up and down in the mornings and try to actually avoid the scrapes, and try to help people, literal scrapes actually, as well as metaphorical scrapes, because it's actually a crisis point. People have nowhere to park. People cannot get the train into Dublin in the morning. They've bought a house on the promise of a public transport system in place from the North Kildare, from the Sallins area and Naas and Clane, and they're unable to use it because they simply cannot get a car parking space in the morning. Minister, I'm hoping you can expedite some solutions. There are obvious solutions that build a new car park. They run fast. It's not as simple as that, of course, but there may be other solutions. But Minister, I'm hoping you have some good news for me today.
Thanks, Deputy Lawless. Minister Ross.
I'd like to thank Deputy Lawless for bringing up this issue, and he's right. I'm well aware of the problems which he has in the Sallins and Naas area, and indeed in many of the routes which he represents so well in this House, and so often and so frequently. I've no doubt that both Deputy Lawless and I welcome the increased numbers of passengers availing of the improved train services along the Kildare line. These increases have been made possible through the improved level of services provided through increased PSO funding, as well as the increased levels of capital expenditure on projects such as the completed Phoenix Park Tunnel and the ongoing city centre re-signalling project. And I'm happy to say that we're Sorry, I've got a script here which I can provide you with. That'd be helpful. I should have done it. I should have given that to him earlier. I apologise. It just might be helpful to you. There we are. Yeah. Thanks. I'm happy to say that we're providing further increases to funding as part of Project Island 2040, which will further improve capacity on the Kildare line. These improvements include the DART expansion programme and indeed the improved management of the overall network, which the new National Train Control Centre will provide. But I recognise that in the short term, there are of course pressures across the network at certain places and at certain times. And the issue of car parking at Sallins is one of those pressure points. These pressures have increased with the expanded and improved level of service, as well as the inclusion of the station within the short hop zone. Together, these have all led to increased demand on what I know is a relatively limited amount of car parking at the station. As the Deputy is probably aware, my department provides funding through the NTA in relation to car parking at train stations in the GDA. I can inform the Deputy that there is a project under development to significantly extend the number of car parking spaces available at the station. On foot of the funding provided through the NTA, Dáil Éireann has been preparing the detailed planning and design and will take the lead on implementation. This will be a significant project costing around €2 million and will result in a total of around 445 spaces being made available for commuters, which is an increase of around 270 spaces as compared to today. In terms of progress, the various surveys have all been completed and pre-planning discussions with the Council are ongoing. There have been some slight delays to the timelines as compared with those the Deputy was provided with by the NTA last September, which unfortunately has pushed out delivery times a little. I am now informed that a tender will issue very shortly in relation to securing a contractor for the physical works. Subject to planning, it is hoped to start actual construction later in the summer or early autumn. Construction will take around 9 to 12 months, and so the revamped car park will likely be ready by Q2 next year. While I can completely understand the frustrations of commuters today in relation to the car park, I hope that they can take some comfort from the fact that works to address this issue are well underway.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy Lawless to respond.
Thank you, Caoimhe, and thanks, Minister. Minister, I am aware and I do welcome the commitment that you gave me last year after one of our previous debates to I suppose, pursue that car park option, and I know that was underway and is underway. It has hit some roadblocks locally, unfortunately, and I've been in discussions myself with the NTA, with the Kildare County Council, with Irish Rail, and various different stakeholders to try to, I suppose, move that forward. And Minister, I would ask you to, I suppose, to join me in that in terms of pressure you can put on, and in terms of bringing matters to a head and prioritising the necessary works to get that over the line, because there is a plan in motion. But as I say, there have been some technical difficulties and planning difficulties, but I think it's important to get all the heads around the table, and certainly I'm doing everything I can, and I would just ask Minister that you would do the same in your department to encourage the parties to resolve outstanding issues and move that forward. There are, Minister, potentially some other solutions that could be explored. Sallins and Naas came into the short hop zone about 2 years ago, along with Hazelhatch and Selbridge. There are still commuters from Newbridge, Kildare Town and further out who are travelling, who are actually driving past their local station, in the case of Newbridge and Kildare Town, I think even Monasterevin potentially, driving actually up from south of the county to Sallins to park there because it is in the short hop zone, because to value the cheaper fares. It doesn't really make sense from a number of perspectives, not least climate change because of further emissions, people driving further to get to the station, but from a logical point of view and even from a practical convenience and comfort point of view, people don't really want to drive past the local station to get to another station, but the budget decrees they must at the moment. So I would ask you, Minister, to talk to the NTA about extending that local hop zone down to Newbridge and possibly beyond as well. I think that would take some pressure off the situation. Another suggestion I'd put to you, Minister, and I'd ask you to explore it with the NTA and the other stakeholders. There is a system of feeder buses in some of these stations, including Sallins, Naas and Hazelhatch, Selbridge. The feeder bus actually makes a lot of sense because you take people from the surrounding towns, from the surrounding estates, from places that are too far to walk, from maybe from 3 to 5 miles away, and actually put them in a bus. And this already is happening in the Naas town, but there aren't enough of them, and the routes aren't comprehensive enough. I think with a small improvement, and I think that would sit very well into public policy, we could actually expand the feeder bus network to cover the likes of Clane, Cara, Sallins, Naas, and actually bring people to the stations without ever having to step into a car, because they step into the bus and travel along. And I suppose to fast-track those options, and it may be something a temporary site could be explored in the very short term, because it is an emergency situation, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Yeah, I think what I'll say in response to that is that if it was helpful to the Deputy, I will certainly pass on those other alternative solutions, including the local hop zone and the feeder bus solution, to the NTA and see what their view of it is. And I'm sure they'll respond to the Deputy. I understand his frustration at the long time that this has taken, and it does happen a lot, I suppose, on car park developments when people want them overnight and they can't be done with that amount of speed. You were provided with the detailed information by the NTA, I think, last September in response to a PQ which you put. At that stage, it was hoped to submit the planning application by the end of 2018, and you're perfectly correct. But it was pre-planning discussions with the Council, which meant that the deadline was met. There is, I will hasten to add, nothing of substance behind this delay. The project will go ahead. It was more a case of these discussions highlighted issues around zoning of the proposed new car park, which needed to be taken into account in preparing the planning application. Thank you.
That concludes that topical issue. Thank you, Deputy Lawless, for the issue.